You know, I met Remo Belli when I was 13 years old. I was very fortunate as a young drummer. And I looked up to him and thought, this guy not only loves drums, he loves drummers, and he's doing it for drummers. And he wants drummers to sound good, and he wants the recordings to sound good, and he wants people to say, I used Remo heads, and he can have pride in that because he can listen back. You listen to Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, Remo heads. You listen to Alex Van Halen, John Bonham, Neil Peart, Remo heads. So what you get there are the best in the world using the best drum heads. And that's why. It's because when you want the best, you go to Remo. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, I'm Stephen Perkins. I'm a drummer. Born in 1967, which makes me 46 years old. Born in Los Angeles, California. And I started a band called Jane's Addiction in 1985. Now, why Remo heads? There's so many drum heads out there. You know, it's really about the understanding that Remo Belli has for another drummer, because he's a drummer. He knows what the drum set needs, he knows what the drummer wants, he knows the response, that it's right or wrong, and he knows the fit, the type of glue to use to make sure it stretches into place. Because as you tighten your head, you'll hear the cracking and the snapping. The head is fitting into your drum. And as you learn how to tune drums, you know, it takes a while because it's an art, but as you learn how to tune drums, you realize the drum head is the most important part of tuning your drum, is if it's a good quality head. What I'm using lately is the PowerStroke 77. What it does for my snare is remarkable. It dries it up, it gives it more of a snap, and takes away some of the honk that you might be used to. Now, it's basically an emperor head with a black dot on top and a very thin inlay. And this inlay, sometimes you might see it on a PowerStroke as a thicker inlay. On the 77, it's thin, and it just kind of mutes a little bit of that sting that you might get on an ambassador or an emperor. And what I find now is the interplay between the kick and the snare is so defined. Now you think about a frequency of a mix. What's on top? Cymbals, guitar, snare drum, and vocals. In the middle, there's toms, bass, and guitar, and below there's kick drum, bass guitar. But that snare drum has to compete with a lot of instruments. Guitar riff, hi-hat, vocal. When a singer says S, that S gets in the way of the snare. And these things you realize as you mix over the years, how to get the snare to fit in just right. And it's really about how you tune it, how you hit it, and what head you're using. And I find in the studio, this drum head really gives the snare its own little spot in the mix. It's not competing with anybody. It really tightens it up. It's got a little bit of a white noise to it. You know, it adds a little more of a sting in a way. Now, what I'm playing now is the Power Sonic. It's a clear head, and it's round. It's boomy in a way, but then again, you can take the note down and get a lot of punch and a lot of attack. And with the Power Sonic, you can get a real note out of there. Ooh. And you can back that down if you need to, but you can feel that there's an actual musical note coming out of your bass drum, and not just a thud or a punch. Now, I think the best sounding tom-tom head for me is the Ambassador coated all the way around. But they are a little thin for live, and you can go through them very quickly. And sometimes they can be a little tough to tune on the bigger drums for people. So sometimes I'll use coated Ambassadors 8, 10, 12, and go to coated amps for 14, 16, and 18. It takes away a little of the sting on the bigger drums, and they're a little easier to tune. I like to use the word chocolatey. There's a chocolatey sound to it. It's got dark texture, it's got attack, but it's not plasticky sounding. It's warm. And of course, the calfskin back in the day, in the 20s, was all they had. And when they first came out with the Ambassador coated, I think it was the most close you can get to a calfskin head. And when you tune it nice and low, you get like a boo. And you bring it up high, boo. It's more of a linear sound, the tightener. The more tight it gets, I find it to be more linear. The looser it gets, it starts to be more round and curved.